Good evening and welcome to Crawley Borough Council's Cabinet of the 8th of October. I'm Councillor Michael Jones, Leader of the Council and Chair of the Cabinet. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the main spiral staircase and through the main reception doors. Once outside, please turn left and make your way to the fire assembly point located beyond the multi-storey car park on Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stairs, please wait in the council chamber and you'll be guided by a member of the staff to the evacuation lift. This meeting is being live streamed via the council's YouTube channel. Please note that there is a no comments function available as part of this webcasting. The council is a data controller and will retain the data collected during this webcast. This will be done so in accordance with the council's published data retention policy. Any members of the public seated in the public gallery should be aware that by entering the chamber, they are consenting to their image being captured by the automated camera system. Recordings will be used for webcasting and or training purposes. Councillors are also reminded to take note of what is displayed on the screens in the room, as this shows what is being recorded and webcast. Cameras are currently set to capture you in seated positions, so please remain seated when speaking. You can request to speak as usual in committees by raising your hand, to speak by pressing the button with a face on it, and the microphone will go green when you're live. Before we start the meeting, rather sadly, this will be the last cabinet for our head of governance, people and performance, Siraj Chowdhury, who has been with us for nearly 5 years now, I think it is. As this is his last cabinet meeting before he moves on to the London Borough of Sutton as their Director of Law and Governance, Siraj, on behalf of the Cabinet and myself, we would like to thank you for your support and hard work, and we wish you good luck in your new role. Well, having said that, we will now commence with apologies for absence. Have we received any apologies for absence? No, we're all here. That's great. Disclosures of interest. Does any member have any disclosures of interest? Councillor Russell.
I'll just disclose the disclosure of interest that I did on Monday, which is for, I believe, item 6, which is that I've been organising acts of remembrance and working for the RBL fundraising for about 30 years. Thank you,
Councillor Russell. I don't see anyone else, so I'll move on to the next item, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Due to the last Cabinet meeting being held on the 24th of September and this agenda publication on the 26th of September, the minutes of the meeting on the 24th of September will be considered at the next meeting along with the minutes for tonight's meeting. With that, we move on to public question time. We have 15 minutes for public question time, but I think the member of the public present doesn't wish to ask one, so in which case I'll move us on to the next item. For item 4, further notice of intention to conduct business in private and notifications of any representations. Please can I ask the monitoring officer to confirm if we've received any notifications? Thank you. Matters referred to the Cabinet and any report from the Chair and the Overview Scrutiny Commission. As normal, Councillor Russell, I will bring you in during each item which has been referred from the Commission. So we move on to item 6, where we will start by considering the Tilgate Park War Memorial Petition Report. In accordance with the Cabinet procedure rules, we have a maximum of 30 minutes to consider this petition. If the petition is not fully debated within the 30 minutes, it will be referred to the relevant Cabinet member for consideration or deferred until the next Cabinet meeting. So, Councillor Mullins, I'll bring you in to get your response. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the way that they listened to and dealt with this item when I went to present it there. It was very well handled, and I thought they, I was well listened to. The situation with that mural up at the park, and I don't intend to go too much through this script now, but was that a mural had been put on the walled garden, on a wall in the walled garden by the cafe, without permission, without any agreement with the council, and without any maintenance agreements or anything. There was actually no basis or foundation to that mural being there at all. And we ended up having it there because we were running up to the 100 years anniversary of the 1418 war, the First World War, and we decided that perhaps for understandable and emotional reasons and etc., that for that year we would leave it there. Unfortunately, after that, we ran into COVID, and running into COVID where the officers were really, really diverted onto alternative work, and so were some important members at the time, and we couldn't really proceed to do anything else other than that. So this temporary status that we'd taken the decision on with that went on a little longer than perhaps what it should have done. This January, February, we actually got around again to dealing with it. And by that time, because maybe of the poor quality of the paint actually used, it had deteriorated to an extreme extent in any case. There was no maintenance agreement with it, and we were facing the renewal of the contract for the Wall Garden Cafe and going out to competitive tendering, and we really needed to create and ensure that we had a blank sheet there for any prospective contractor to come in with their ideas on how they wanted the Wall Garden area to look. And this would not have been in keeping. I think it's generally agreed that a mural such as this particular one was the wrong type in the wrong place, and should never have ever been put there in any case. We removed it, and it was removed. It wasn't painted over. It was physically removed, and it's gone, and that's the situation we're in now. I explained all this to the OSC, and we have been working with the armed forces organisations in the meantime. We have regular meetings with them, and regular discussions are going on with them about how we work with them on Memorial Days and days in the Memorial Gardens where they have get together and make presentations and maybe a festival or two. And you know, we have a very good working relationship with our armed forces organisations in this town, and long may that continue. I know the officers have been dealing with, I think it was John Johnson, the officer concerned with the armed forces in Crawley. And what was actually missing from Tilgate Park in a way was the guys from the First World War who actually lived in and around the park and worked in the park. That was before, of course, we owned it. And I think a number of those, 6 or 8 or something of those, died during the First World War. And what we've agreed now with John Johnson's agreement, and he's pleased to accept it, is to create a plaque which we can put somewhere in the park. The area and the place of placement is yet to be discussed and decided. And that will go up in the park in remembrance of those workers that came into that war directly from the park. Chair, I don't really intend to go on very much longer now. We have got to a situation now where we've got the Wall Garden into a situation when we can happily go out to tender and look at what the tender results are and make the right decision on who runs our very successful CAF actually in the Wall Garden and into the future, and whether there's any new themes to come for that. And then to see what we can do working with the armed forces in Crawley to satisfy any further needs that they might have in memorial terms. And that some of those ideas have got to come from them, of course, and in discussions, and I know through Sue's portfolio, the committee's portfolio, she meets them on a regular basis. We don't want to duplicate the work. We are meeting them, and we can talk about it there with our officers and maybe other members who could attend some of those meetings. I think that we've got to a satisfactory conclusion to this whole business now, and I would like to think that allowing us to go on and talk to them about where the placing of the plaque is and what future needs they've got should be a satisfactory conclusion to this whole situation. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. I would just want to make it clear now that the petitioner, the principal petitioner who submitted this petition, has indicated that he doesn't want to address this meeting, although he has been given every opportunity. So I will, on that basis, I will bring in Councillor Russell to present the Commission's comments. Thank you, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chair. We had a fairly long discussion on this matter, and there's approximately 6 points that I think I'd like to highlight. You'll have the record of the comments. Firstly, the issue of the mural appearing on the council's Facebook was questioned. We weren't able to ascertain as to who put it up onto the council's Facebook post, but it was felt that this perhaps muddied the waters somewhat over the legitimacy of the mural. It may have indicated it had the council's support. Secondly, the comprehensive report and narrative that was given by Councillor Mullins and the explanations for the timing and reasons for the mural being taken down were accepted by the OSC. The members largely accepted those. Third point, and I think this is sort of quite pertinent, is that the Commission did discuss the elements of surprise surrounding the mural's removal, which probably may have resulted in the petition and some feeling that backs had been put up slightly. That was something that was discussed. Fourth point, the discussion and considerations that have been mentioned here about a possible different memorial in a slightly different location of a different nature was welcomed, and that was as I say, welcomed and thought to be a good idea. The precise nature of that, the OSC didn't have any particular view on, but it was felt that it would be appropriate to have something replace it. But the fifth point, I'd say that, and it does sound like that's happening, that the Commission was absolutely clear that what was critical to this, that there is consultation with the key and relevant groups. Finally, the sixth point I'd mention was that the OSC has requested a report for their consideration of what we do in terms of our work with veterans groups, with armed forces groups, and in particular light of the fact that Crawley Borough Council will be disappearing in 2028 as it stands at the moment. We want to make sure that for our community all our ducks are lined up properly so that we can continue to acknowledge the work that has been done and the sacrifices made by servicemen and women in the past and those that are serving at the moment. So that continues, and it was acknowledged that as a holder of the Silver Award, we do a pretty good job on that. And the final point I would make, which I made at the meeting myself, is that I came to the town 7 years ago, and on a personal note, I've been delighted to see the amount of work that is done in the town and the support that the council gives to that. So that's a summary, and I'll leave it to the Cabinet and the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Chairman. And firstly, may I echo your comments in regard to Mr Chowdhury and thank him for his service and wish him well in his new role. I think we'll see him at full council, won't we? I think probably as well. Firstly, I would encourage anybody who's interested in this subject to actually read the report, which is quite informative to help form a view. I'll start by saying that there has been some inference out there that the council is somehow unsupportive of veterans and the armed forces, and I want to dispel that. And the report sets out the things that the council do for veterans and for the armed forces. You know, we like engaging with them. I was part of the cabinet in 2013 where Bob Lands was the then Conservative leader, signed the Armed Forces Covenant, and that has continued into this administration. So I'll put that backstop there. And I certainly think as well there was no intention to be in any way disrespectful to veterans. But unfortunately, what came across was quite frankly a PR disaster. It felt very much that this made the national press. It felt very much that the council was on the back foot here. People found out in April via a Facebook post. It had been removed in February. Nobody really was aware. People don't tend to go up to the walled garden that much in the winter time. People were not really aware until they saw this Facebook post, and that's when really there was quite a storm that kicked off. And I do think, while when you read the report, I accept the reasons to why it had fallen into disrepair, and therefore something had to be done, and it wasn't suitable to restore it. At the same time, there's a lot of perceptions out there that the council was very much on the back foot and has somehow done this perhaps in a sneakily way by just doing it and then not saying anything, and the perception was that no one would hopefully notice or anything. And then when they did, it then felt that the council was forever playing catch up. And what was noticeable as well is that we're getting officer quotes rather than member quotes. We're not getting the member leadership that we get when there's good news to have. So we often see a cabinet member for leisure, and indeed, well, pretty much every press release now, that the leader, they're always there and for photograph when there's something good. But this wasn't advertised at all. And I think in hindsight, a learning point from this could be actually to be upfront about it and to say at the time, we need to remove this for X, Y, Z reasons. There were sensitivities here that I think we're all aware of, but we were just not that upfront about it at the time, and the public were not made aware. So, I think this is a sorry moment in the council's history. I don't believe it was done intentionally to upset anybody at all, but it just came across as being handled badly, and I hope that learning points will be made. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. I'll now open the debate for other cabinet members. I see Councillor Irvine first, then Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's fair to say there's been a catalogue of misunderstandings over all this, because I do find it hard to believe that anyone would choose to go up to Tilgate Park off their own accord and decide to spend a lot of time and energy in creating a mural for no great purpose. And I was looking on the internet today for the history of this, and I came across a story which was published by Sussex World, the Crawley Observer, back in November 2018. And on the 11th of November 2018, to commemorate the armistice 100 years before, there had been an event in Tilgate Park at which the then Mayor, Carlos Castro, spoke. The Friends of Tilgate Park created a field of poppies. There were various events going on in and around the walled garden, and the Crawley Borough Council spokesman said, and I quote, that there was also an amazing mural. So, I think that the artist has spent a lot of his time up there creating this. It may not be to everyone's taste, but he's obviously put a lot of skill and talent into it. And as I say, a lot of time. So I think, in a way, I just sincerely hope that the artist hasn't felt slighted or upset by anything that's been said about his intentions or about his abilities. And I am sorry that this happened. I think you have to be very, very careful with people's sensibilities, particularly around memories, heritage, and wartime. I mean, people spend so much time these days researching their family histories, and going back and finding out all the things that happened to their grandfathers in the First World War, the Second World War. So, in my view, Chair, this is an opportunity for this council now to show that it can meet with people, it can take into account their views, it can be empathetic, and it can produce or try its best to reduce produce a result that makes everybody happy.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. As the report does state, some significant work has already gone into doing all of those things, I think. Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. It's an important part of our psyche, remembering the war, service, sacrifice of those who served. My granddad was at the Somme. My dad was a reserve occupation, working on military equipment and munitions during the Blitz in London. I served with, as others did, with various councillors in various arms of the armed service. And it's an important part of this family, my family's makeup. It's an important part of the new town, and you could actually argue that new town was formed for a town fit for heroes. So when it comes to the upset and surprise of residents when they heard about the mural being removed, I just want to say we get it, we do understand. But at the same time, I also understand, as you explained at OSC, Councillor Jones, that after it was removed, we perhaps in hindsight could have done better on comms, on the PR, and perhaps at the very least contacted the various veteran groups and just explained. So when they went up there, they probably knew it was going to be there. However, and in terms of the mural itself, I think we all appreciate the solace and the comfort it gave, and for remembrance, and it was an important part. But having said that, despite its unorthodox history on how the mural came into being, I do understand and agree what the operational reasons were and why it was decided that the mural should be removed. And I also agree with one of the OSC members who said that, yes, it did give a lot of comfort to people, but at the same time, it was probably in the wrong place. So, this is, and I'd like to thank the OSC Chair for his report and the OSC Commission members for their comments. And I think the element of surprise is the one thing which I would take away of how it impacts on residents. But now we have got a chance to move on. I think as a council, back to the 2013 military covenants, the help we give, advice for those in housing need, our role in the Crawley Civil Military Partnership, our funding and support of Armed Forces Days, which not many councils in the south of England do, the help on the Armed Forces Breakfast Club, which former Mayor Councillor Hart has been heavily involved with, shows our commitment to the veterans. And now we've got a chance, and the plaque as well, because I do think that we talk about the new town and the Second World War, but the Great War is important, and the Manor House was important, so we can remember it. So I hope that we do two things. We do carefully consider the scrutiny panel, because that will give a chance for us to talk to those veterans groups who we have got a good relationship with, and see, what they want, and perhaps what kind of resolution we can think about the future. And I think talking and showing that we're considerate shows how we can move on from this. But I in the end, I think, although I do understand the reasons for doing it, there were one or two lessons we perhaps could learn, and we can move on from here.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton. Councillor Sue Mullins.
Thank you. Good evening, Cabinet. First of all, I think it's really important for us in the Cabinet and for all of our people in Crawley to remember that Crawley did not begin in 1947, that Crawley has been a place for hundreds and hundreds of years, and that we have a great history here. And that the fact that Tilgate Park wasn't Tilgate Park, it was an estate where many people worked on the land, because in those days more people worked on the land than they do these days, and that there's a history there to be remembered. So it's very important that we recognise and understand the feelings of people there's an awful lot of people still in Crawley who are descended from the original people of Crawley who were here before everyone came from London and other areas and moved in here. I mean, my granddad was here in Crawley, and he served in the First World War on the convoys going across the Atlantic. I mean, there's a lot of history there, and we need to remember that. Now, the the job that's been done with the mural, it was important at its time, it served its purpose, but like all artworks, unfortunately, artworks have a limited life. We're now talking about different artworks around the town for which we don't have a budget for any sort of repair, but we do our best to sort of preserve the things we've got. But artworks do, on the whole, unless you've got a really expensive bronze statue, they do not last forever. It's really important, the work we already do with civilian-military partnership. I attend all those meetings and I chair all the meetings. We have a really good relationship with our military people. We support them all through the year. We support them with the events that they run during the year, with the Remembrance Sunday, with our Armed Forces Day, with the breakfast clubs. We take great notice of them. And it's really great that we initiated the covenant and that we've managed to now achieve silver accreditation for the work we do within the council and how we treat our veterans and how we respect our veterans in the town. Really important. We have a fantastic history of engagement and a really good relationship with them all, and I would like that to continue. We've already started to talk to our partners in the military about what we would do with the plaque. The plaque has already been commissioned and it won't be taking very long before it's put up, but that will be done in conjunction with the people in the military partnership. They will come to the park, they will look around and decide where the correct place to put it. We've also got 3 forms of wording that we would like them to agree to, what they think is absolutely suitable, and so that we commemorate those young people who unfortunately marched off to war all those years ago and never came back. It's a sad part of our history, but it's something that does need to be commemorated. I think it's something that our people in the town need to understand too about artworks. That again, artworks have a limited life, and unless you can afford to completely replace them all the time, it just cannot be done. We've just had to remove the lovely work that was done by Creative Crawley along the pavement, along Marks and Spencer's. It was lovely. It gave people a huge amount of pleasure walking through there, but it got to the stage where it was starting to peel, and when something peels, little children with little fingers, not always little children, people with sticky fingers like to peel it off. And unfortunately, to replace that and put it back as it was is horrendously expensive, and that goes for all artworks. So artworks have their time, they have a life, and then they're replaced with perhaps something different, perhaps something better, more appropriate, more up to date. There's all sorts of considerations, but we don't do anything in this town without talking to our military partners and making sure they're comfortable and happy with the decisions that are taken in conjunction with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. I think we haven't got an awful lot of time left for the petition now. It's in terms of the time limit, so I'm going to just address a few of the points and in concluding. Thank you to everyone who's contributed tonight, whose views I've heard. I think Councillor Mullins has given a full and honest account of what happened tonight and in more detail on OSC on Monday night. Indeed, as I said then, and I apologise to anyone who's heard both meetings, but I'll be saying quite a lot of what I said on Monday night tonight. But Councillor Mullins was in an unenviable position because he was faced with a mural that deteriorated in the weather beyond repair. The circumstances on which this mural was put up, never mind how it was removed, were far from ideal. I don't want to relitigate this all over again, but the fact remains that it wasn't given the permission it needed to go up, and it was allowed to stay up for the year of the centenary of the end of the First World War, on the clear understanding it was going to be temporary, but that appears to have been forgotten along the way a little too readily. But at the time of its removal, with local government reorganisation beginning along with the major budget savings being made at the budget, which was impending, officers and cabinet members became immediately, both corporately and in policy terms, involved in an extended set of other activities. And it's easy to say what we should have done with hindsight in looking at this in isolation. And if I have a regret, it is looking back on this with hindsight. I would have wanted the council to have let some of the local armed forces groups know after it had been removed, rather than have them discover it for themselves. But in the council's defence, there was an exceptional amount happening at the time, but that could have been picked up sooner. Throughout this, however, I was clear following the decision being implemented that we must work going forward with the local groups to find an alternative that they could be happy with. And that work is still ongoing, as we've heard tonight, and it's in the report. But I am also very, very pleased that in the first instance, a plaque dedicated to those workers at Tilgate Park that were lost in the First World War is being prepared and installed so that their names are being remembered. These were not the only names covered elsewhere. The others, I'm informed, are present in one shape or form, except for possibly a very small number, just not necessarily in one place. And that's because Crawley itself is a relatively modern construct. Most are recorded within the parish areas that made up the area that covered Crawley over a century ago, long before the advent of the new town. And if you look at it through that perspective, actually their siting is logical, if not in a central place. It has been mentioned, but I do also want to maintain that the council's done some great things with our armed forces locally, and the extent of what we do as a borough council and our commitment is significant. We have Armed Forces Day. There have been grants to local veterans groups. We consistently support the Crawley Civil Military Partnership. These aren't little things. In the last few years, the various breakfast clubs that operate in our area have received grants amounting to nearly £2,000. I believe that some of this money in the former case went towards the provision of a new standard for veterans, which I was personally very pleased to see. The budget for our Armed Forces Day and the cost of delivering this year's event, and we have done that for many years now, is around £2,000. And there are also a lot of additional officer time that this council puts in, which I hasten to add we are happy to do. But again, these hold some considerable value in themselves that, if they were quantified, would almost certainly exceed the amount we spend on Armed Forces Day. Indeed, I'm informed that of the major local authorities in West Sussex, it's only us at Crawley Borough Council and Horsham District Council that directly organise an Armed Forces Day event on an annual basis. Other town councils do, but those are done at parish level, not from the districts and boroughs. In addition, I understand from discussions, and I hope I'm not. The chair can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the OSC is considering creating a scrutiny panel that looks to see how our local civil military covenant is working, and ways that it can be refreshed in cooperation with the council and all relevant stakeholders. And this was referenced, I think, on Monday night by the chair.
It's in the minutes, yeah.
Yeah, and something which I'm sure we can all support as a cabinet and will. However, returning to the issue of an appropriate memorial, we will continue to do things and press ahead with work on something more substantial to commemorate those fallen. But this may be in a more central location in town. There still remains, of course, the War Memorial at St John's Church, and this has been there throughout this whole time. And there are others, as I think have been referred to, St Michael and All Saints and the various other locations. If there is additional money to be spent, while I read the demand of the petition, I would rather that any money from this council, however it is currently allocated, was spent directly on paying towards what the new memorial will require to be created. Because otherwise, if we were waiting for public subscription, that could take a long time to raise the sort of money that would be required. In terms of in my own commitment, Councillor Crowe mentioned that the council under his administration back in the day signed up to the community covenant with the MOD. Well, it's a matter of public record that it was my motion to full council that got cross-party support back in July 2012 to sign up to it. And absolutely, we want to recognise the bravery and commitment of the armed forces, both serving and veteran members and their families. So none of us in this cabinet or in this council is indifferent, and indeed we are extremely grateful for the service of our armed forces. And I think the homecoming march, which was held some time ago when Carol Lead was the mayor, also showed the strength of feeling among local people that we absolutely recognise. So just to address the points raised in the petition, I believe the report provides a full explanation for how this happened, and I've covered the issue of payment. So for these reasons, I would propose that the Cabinet does the following. A, we note the petition. B, acknowledge the points made during the discussion at the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, and C, welcome the ongoing work that councillors and CBC officers are doing, both to install a new plaque at Tilgate Park, as well as their continued work with local armed forces groups for an alternative memorial. And I think obviously we will continue to bear in mind very clearly the points that have been made in the discussion tonight. So with that, I make that proposal from the chair. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Sue Mullins, I think, on this occasion, because of your armed forces role. Cabinet, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We will move on to consider the Budget Strategy 26-27, 27-28 reports. Due to issues with the auto-numbering and minor errors, there is a supplementary agenda which includes a revised copy of the report and Appendix A, which have been subsequently corrected. There have been no key changes to the recommendations or reasons for the recommendations, so I don't intend to spend too much time on the minor alterations that have been made. But I am happy to present the report. The council has a statutory responsibility to set a budget and council tax in advance of the commencement of the new financial year. And the report sets out the budget strategy, and it only goes up to 27-28 due to the abolition of Crawley Borough Council from the 1st of April 2028 as a result of local government reorganisation. It does has to address the high levels of uncertainty in government funding that the council has to face due to the Fair Funding Review 2.0, inflation and rising service demands, especially homelessness. The council is awaiting the provisional local government finance settlement due in mid-December 2025 for its grant allocation. Whilst the report is based on the latest information and best estimates, budget forecasting is volatile and subject to change inevitably. The uncertainty and pressures are detailed in the report, along with the assumptions that will set the budget parameters for 26-27. Our council finances started to come under pressure in 23-24, requiring in-year savings and adjustments to be made. But the outturn for 24-25 was favourable due to robust budget and reserve management. The 25-26 budget was also favourable, allowing a budgeted contribution to reserves of £88,000. However, as reported in Q1 this year, an overspend of £326,000 is reported to be the case at the end of this 25-26 financial year. So, given all the pressures, I would say to Cabinet, we begin from a solid position due to the huge amount of work that was done on the budget last year. This has undoubtedly allowed us to approach what needs to be done this year from a stronger point than otherwise would have been the case. The medium-term financial strategy is the strategic framework that outlines the Council's financial planning over the medium term, bringing together all the known factors and key assumptions affecting the Council's financial position. The assumptions are detailed throughout the report. However, as we've known from previous discussions, the assumptions on funding have been challenging to forecast. The government announced its intention to reform local authority funding from 26-27 onwards, while providing more increased certainty through a 3-year settlement. The reforms will impact both the funding distributed according to need through a relative needs formula and funding received through the business rate retention scheme. Early indications show that the Council will gain from the relative needs formula. However, the level of funding that the Council will receive will not be known, sadly, until the settlement in December 2025. This is not an unusual occurrence, but it is later than we were originally advised. And as the Council has experienced in the past, the devil is often in the detail, which is not always immediately available. So in order to try and assess the funding allocation expected, the Council works with 2 leading advisors in local government funding, Pixel and LG Futures. However, the forecasts from them both differ quite widely. Therefore, in order to look at the middle way. A third methodology is also modelled of a cash flat scenario. And the three methodologies that we use to forecast funding, Pixel Finance, after all the changes, predicts a surplus for the council of £711,000 in 26-27. LG Futures, however, predicts a deficit of 3.5 million. That's not a terribly comforting range to have in these circumstances. So our finance officers have also put forward a cash flat methodology which would predict a deficit of just over £2.5 million. It should also be noted that there is some uncertainty still over Home Office new burdens funding in the region of £2 million, which poses a significant risk across all the scenarios. Officers and myself, I can assure the Cabinet, have been working to try and get clarity on this for some time, but until now with no success. Looking at our reserves management will continue, including identifying any reserves that may be used to support a potentially worsening financial situation in the current and future years if necessary. However, the use of reserves is only a short-term solution. I don't need to tell the Cabinet that. And it wouldn't be sustainable, especially as the general fund balance forecast would fall below the recommended £3 million minimum in 26-27 if the most pessimistic methodologies prove to be correct. Looking at the capital strategy, we will focus on maintaining assets and environmental obligations, as well as spend to save projects, but that won't preclude us from looking or doing those that deliver social value. Borrowing is likely given the size of the programme, but it must be avoided wherever possible due to the revenue implications. We will also have a flexible use of capital receipts strategy 25-26. Capital receipts can only be used for specific purposes, mainly to fund capital expenditure. However, there is a time-limited flexibility to use capital receipts to fund revenue costs of capital reform. This is documented in Appendix C of the report. Full council is requested to approve the strategy as it will allow the application of capital receipts to support the realisation of service reductions, if any are approved for 25-26. However, nevertheless, we intend to develop plans in this interim period in terms of a saving strategy. It's not prudent for the council to wait for the announcement of the provisional settlement in mid-December to start planning for any base budget savings. While we might hope for the best, it will require some detailed discussion to identify what will be needed if the savings are required. And the short-term horizon dictated by local government reform limits long-term savings initiatives and therefore the saving strategy. We might, for example, come up with some ideas that save some considerable money over time, but if this council doesn't have that time, it's not something that will make as much difference as it otherwise would. It's therefore recommended to continue with a phased approach to closing any potential budget gap by identifying £1.5 million worth of savings for the 26-27 budget based on the cash flat budget scenario, and to balance the budget through the planned use of reserves if that is required. Now, Cabinet, I would dearly love, for example, that the Pixel finance projections to be proved correct, but we cannot be sure for now. And as leader of this council, I've always kept a firm hand on spending and affordability, and I intend for that to continue. And we will take proportionate measures to ensure that as much as possible the council remains solvent and also prioritises our communities and their services. Now later we'll be discussing the corporate plan, where we'll be speaking more about what that will look like. So to reiterate in summary, there are high levels of uncertainty, so the estimates in the strategy are likely to change. The detailed funding allocations will not be confirmed until provisional settlement in December 2025, which follows the autumn budget on the 26th of November. So thank you for listening to that extended introduction. I will now bring in Councillor Russell to present the Commission's comments.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, Cabinet members and committee members have the comments and recommendations sheet. There are 6 or 7 items that I will try and highlight. What I would say is that we had a very robust and useful discussion with the questions and answers with the officers, which the OSC, I think, felt was valuable. First of all, it was recognised there is a huge and significant uncertainty with much of the forecast in the council's revenue not of their own making. And it was discussed and it was felt that the flat cash assumption was probably the best reasonable basis for planning. Secondly, again, it was acknowledged the differences in the financial modelling, and as has been said by the chair, plan for the worst and hope for the best, and that was obviously seen as a sensible approach. The OSC recognised the huge number of variables, and again they've been listed by the chair, so I won't go through those, and how they're impacting on any attempt to provide precise budgetary information. And as it says in the comments, and I think it's worth repeating, officers were commended for their work in the circumstances. There was support for flexible use of capital receipts and the strategy, which is, I think, outlined in section C, and a further comment was made at the OSC that, and it was in response to a question, that confirmation would be provided that transformation projects would demonstrate a financial return, including consideration of opportunity costs. So if assets were to be used, capital asset sales and money to be used, that we would actually incorporate to that the potential loss of income that could have been from interest. There was a query over the potential additional costs with regard to local government reorganisation, and that was explained. I think the Chief Executive explained that we're expected to demonstrate savings and future savings, and the money is not separately allocated. Finally, the OSC did want to say that they will continue to maintain a strong focus in supporting the Council's financial preparedness as we move towards the unitary authority, and continue to work closely to look at budget projections and be a supportive and a critical friend to those figures that are given to us, to try and challenge them and make them as robust as possible. So, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Chairman. The budget strategy takes up 14 pages, but I could probably be quite helpful to you to summarise it in 4 words, which is, we just don't know. I have never quite seen tables like we have in table 2 on page 7 and table 3 on page 8. And as has already been mentioned, the difference between those forecasts are just incredible, quite frankly. But actually, I just want to take members back to, first of all, I welcome in the recommendation about the keeping the reserves at the minimum balance of £3 million, which I'm not sure if it's SITFA, but I know it's recommended by a body who knows what they're talking about in terms of the sensible amount for council reserves to not dip below. And I think that is an important principle to stick to, and I hope that we can. The report also mentions 3-year settlements from government, and I welcome that principle. I think it's something that my previous Conservative government should have done and didn't quite get round to doing. So I welcome that principle, but of course it doesn't really apply to us that much. We have 2 budgets left at Crawley Borough Council. We have the 26-27 budget and the 27-28 budget. And of those 2, the first one is the significant one, because the second one we will then have the shadow, well, depending on how it pans out, the shadow unitary or unitaries, or and there's not, and we are somewhat more limited in that budget for that last year as to what we can do. It'll be more sort of business as usual. So we only really have one significant major budget where the Cabinet can hope to try to influence things. So the 3-year settlement doesn't help us. And of course, it doesn't help us, the fact, and again, you know, the previous government has formed for this as well, about being so late in the day as to the announcements. But what's really unhelpful this time that we haven't seen before is the variations between the projections. And I just find it staggering, quite honestly, that those projections can just be so different as to how we're going to be impacted. I think it does say somewhere that we might get a bit of a steer earlier in December from the government as to where we're more likely to be. But we really are sort of fishing in the dark here in terms of what we're going to be able to do because we just do not know. On page 9, I see that we're budgeting for 3% for a pay award. This year's pay award was 3.2%, and as paragraph 6.3 mentions, no, it's not that one, sorry, no, but it's mentioned in the report somewhere that inflation is 3.8%. So there has been a sub-inflation pay award this year for local government. I suspect inflation by next year will not be below 3%. I'm not sure the unions will put up with another sub-inflation pay award. I suspect they were maybe caught out this year because inflation jumped a little bit and they settled before they knew what inflation might reach. But the point I'm making here is that maybe we might need to just actually assume just a little bit more than 3% in our calculations. I also see as well in paragraph 6.19 the assumption is changing for the new town hall lettings, and not all of my group were in support of. I was personally, but not all of my group were in favour of the new town hall, and some of my group members may argue that they are being proved right in the take up of the lettings, and I know that to start with we had quite conservative with the small c. Projections as to what those lettings would be. So I see we're slowing that down somewhat more. But of course, if there was a pickup, then actually that would be a real potential to increase things. But I'm not quite sure with the economy that is the case. I think my final comment is we need to sort of go back to the language of local government reform. We need to be able to withstand financial shocks, and we don't know what may be coming down the road. So I do think we need to be as prudent as possible, just to be on the safe side. So what the chair of the Scrutiny Commission said about hope for the best but plan for the worst, I think is sound advice. And hopefully we're somewhere in the middle, but but ideally the pixel would be the ideal one. But compared to the other one, I'm not convinced that it's going to be wholly in that direction. So I do think we need to be prudent, we need to be cautious, and obviously I wish Cabinet and officers well in trying to put a budget together, because I think there could be some very difficult decisions to be made. I think I'll just end by saying that I think wherever we go with local government reform, there's going to be difficult decisions. And of course, and I've said this before, if we have two unitaries, we'll be £30 million worse off. And it's sort of than if we have one. It's where those difficult decisions are going to get made. Are they going to get made before the abolition of this council or after? We'll see. But certainly, I think if we have two unitaries, we're looking at more difficult decisions. But obviously, we'll concern ourselves with what we have now. But we're right to try and buy ourselves time. But let's not try to buy too much time to try to manipulate things. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. I'll respond at the end of the debate to the points you've raised, but I'll now open the debate for the other Cabinet members. Councillor Sue Mullins.
Thank you. I'll just be very, very brief. Anybody who's read through those 14 pages of tables, variables, just reams of stuff, and it becomes incredibly confusing. It's very complicated and very complex. Really, the Borough Council is like a huge business, and with so many different things. And so dealing with that, we are extremely fortunate that we have a very good financial team here at Crawley. We always have had extremely good financial advice, and I think we have an exemplary financial team who really are dedicated, efficient, capable, and do their very best for us in what is an ever-changing landscape. And so they have to plan and predict and put forward ideas. I had so many different scenarios. I wouldn't want their job, quite honestly, because I think it's incredibly complicated and probably extremely thankless. They probably have a lot of sleepless nights trying to get to the right place. And you look at these tables and you see all the different variables, all the things that could happen. And with so much of it is completely outside the control of Crawley Borough Council. It's outside what's going on in the big wide world, not just in this country, but in other countries, what's happening with energy, what's happening with wars, what's happening all over the place. We cannot predict what can happen next week, next month or next year. But thank goodness we have an extremely good team supporting us and helping us to make the right decisions that we may have a short time left, but it's still important that we make those right decisions to make sure that Crawley Borough Council goes out on a really good note and a financially stable situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. Any other members of the Cabinet? Councillor Hilton.
Please, very quickly, I think two parts of the report, Appendix A, which goes into detail on the models, 7.4, which goes into all the high levels of different potential funding, shows how uncertain everything is. Bit of an unknown, and I think I would support the recommendation that we go forward with the budget gap cash flat assumption. I think it's the prudent way to go at the moment, and hopefully something good come around the corner. Fingers crossed.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hilton. Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you, Chair. I think I don't need to add any more what Councillor Mullins and Councillor Hilton says. This is a quite complex report and in very uncertain times, and it's not easy to navigate through the financial challenges this council has been facing in the last few years. But just wanted one clarification, if I may. Point 6.16, where it says CPI is 3.8 and the fees and charges has been forecasted by 3.7, but the recommendation is CPI plus 1%. So I'm not sure which forecast has been used and what number is there. Just a little clarification, I think, not on any of the other numbers, but this little bit didn't make any sense to me.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Would the finance officers like to respond on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's 3.7 is what we've used in the forecast because the figures did round slightly differently, and the extra 1% is in order to try and bridge the required savings gap. So that's what we're recommending, that we try and achieve that extra 1% where possible. Obviously, as long as it doesn't affect demand and it increases our income overall.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nawaz, are you happy with that? Would you like to come back on anything? Microphone.
That means in some places it will be 4.7%, so 3.7 plus 1.
We are aiming in all places where possible to have the extra.
Yes, no, that's fine.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Any other Cabinet members would you like to speak? No? In that case, thank you to everyone. Just to address a few things that were said by Councillor Crowe, I mean, we will do what we can to keep as close to the reserve target as possible, but it is a target, and the money is there for a purpose, and the purpose is if in exceptional circumstances we need it, it's there. I also would like to express some impatience. I'd like to know what the result for this council will be of the reforms that are coming into local government finance. But the problem we have is that some of these reforms are needed because the problems that they are addressing were either exacerbated or postponed or kicked down the road by the previous government. So I have to say that regardless of how this council is affected by the change in business rates. I do think that the principle of actually how they are charged and they are applied to individual businesses is right. It seems to me that it is wrong in this day and age that town centre businesses in particular are treated in such a heavy way and are charged so heavily when other businesses elsewhere are not, because there is an assumption, I think, still that everyone goes to the town centre and clearly, or town centres, and clearly a lot of that is not reflected in the business rates. And I think it'll be a real boost to town centre businesses if there is some fairness in their treatment compared to other businesses in elsewhere. So I think particularly with the issues that we're experiencing in town centres across the country, but also including Crawley, it is right that the government is reforming that, and I look forward to that having an effect. I personally thought that the 3% that was budgeted towards the pay awards, it seemed as reasonable as anything that we've put in as projections. They are all projections. We have no certainty of what will actually come out, and indeed we are part of the collective process. So we will agree what is agreed at the national level. But I will discuss with the head of corporate finance if we're satisfied that is the right target. But unless I'm told expressly to the contrary, I think that's a fair value. Councillor Crowe also mentioned the take-up of the Crate building. Well, all I would say, Councillor Crowe, is watch this space. But on a serious point, it is more prudent to be cautious on income relating to this because clearly we have experienced what we have. But again, hindsight is a marvellous thing, and when the agreement to do what we did went ahead, this was well before COVID and well before what we knew was happening with business premises. But all I can say is that with the vacant floors, this could change quite dramatically. And if it does, that's clearly very good news for the council. And I can also assure the cabinet and councillors that our officers are working very hard to ensure that there is good news for the council in the future. And I look forward to hearing more of that news as and when it arrives. So on that basis, everyone's spoken. I move that the Cabinet approves the recommendations as set out in 2.2A to D, as detailed in the report FIN/706 in the supplementary agenda. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Is that agreed? Thank you, Cabinet. We will now move on to consider the 26-27 Housing Revenue Account Business Plan report. There's always quite a lot of jargon in local government, and for anyone who's watching this, I think the way to describe this best is that the housing revenue account is a landlord account that records all the expenditure and income that arises from the provision of housing accommodation that the council provides. It's a ring-fenced account with rent income as the primary source of income. But therefore, it is important to forecast the long-term financial sustainability of the HRA to deliver the council's priorities with regards to council homes for Crawley. And to this end, we have a 30-year business plan which has been put together, has been developed, in order to put sound financial governance around the HRA to ensure that it's both financially robust and it's aligned strategically to our housing priorities. So to undertake this business plan, the council worked with Housing Finance Associates, which are a specialist in HRA business planning, to create a model for Crawley homes. And the baseline scenario draws on the following information sources: our current revenue budget for 25-26, the stock condition investment projections, and the updated development programme we have for new council housing. The business plan is modelled on rent of CPI plus 1% until 2035-36, which gives a baseline position for the HRA of what is affordable. It should be noted that a rent increase of anything less than this would impact on that affordability. It should also be remembered that rent levels have been suppressed over several years by government-mandated below-inflation rent increases, which was CPI minus 1%. This was one of the famous things I think it was George Osborne brought in, which didn't assess the sector. It should be noted that the original intention of the self-financing system that the council and all councils agreed to, who retained their stock in 2012, forced the council to take on significant debt in return for freedoms to plan and fund housing services and capital investment funded by rents. The other assumptions in the plan are detailed in the report. It should be noted that the assumptions for capital spend are subject to a level of uncertainty due to the council's stock conditions data, which is still to be completed, but the survey is due to be completed by the end of December 2025. I would say, given the size of this stock that this council retains, that is a significant achievement in itself, and I would like to express my thanks and recognition to our officers in Crawley Homes for what they've been able to do on that. Borrowing is going to be the main source of capital financing for the development projects. The plan documents the increasing need to borrow for capital and to repay the self-financing loan taken out in 2011-2012. It should be noted that, of course, Cabinet, that in any changes in income, costs or assumptions will impact on the affordability of the plan. So just to summarise that, the baseline position shows that the business plan performs well and is affordable throughout the period of the plan. It also shows that the HRA is able to maintain at least a minimum level of balances of £5 million throughout the 30-year period. This is extremely welcome and shows that the council's HRA is in relatively good health. The baseline position allows for completion of the existing development programme. However, any new schemes would need to be added to the model and would impact on the overall forecast position, and we need to bear that in mind. The development programme and the required level of capital investment in the stock will need to be financed by borrowing, which rises and reaches a peak of £665 million in the final year. This is a significant level of debt, which the plan indicates is affordable. However, the level of debt must be kept under review to ensure that it remains affordable. So, to reiterate, in summary, this report provides early warnings of risks and opportunities based on what we know now. The decisions made now about rent levels and spend will impact on the affordability of the plan. The plan is still subject to the outcome of the completed stock condition survey, and the plan will inform the 26-27 HRA budget and be reviewed annually going forwards. Perhaps moving slightly off of some of the technical criteria here, Cabinet, it is worth saying, however, that the current aspirations that we have would deliver over 540 new council homes, which would be a substantial increase to our stock and will fulfil a great need from residents who have a sufficient local connection under the council's application requirements. It's also worth saying that while some of these debt figures might sound large to Cabinet members and indeed the public, it needs to be remembered that figure does not take into account the significant rental income that will be received on the overall stock, which has been made further secure through recent changes to Right to Buy made by the government, particularly the length of time before the new homes built can be sold. Other changes by the government, including the proportion of sales receipts kept by the council and also the use of the one-for-one receipts towards new building, have also been extremely helpful in this regard. Our HRA is largely in the good condition it is today, in my judgment, because we've done the house building in a period when many other, if not most, local authorities weren't. And we can move forward with some confidence, but there will be some dependency on how much decarbonisation and energy efficiency requirements will directly cost the council, as well as the results of the stock condition survey, which, although we have a good picture, it's not a complete picture yet. So we have delivered, we will continue to deliver, but we'll also remain vigilant. Thank you, Cabinet. I'll bring in Councillor Russell to present the Commission's comments.
Thank you, Chair. First thing I would say is that we had an excellent presentation that was given to us by Glenn Smith, who's head of corporate, not head, but from the Housing Finance Associates. And I believe that the slides from those will be made available in the Council's information bulletin. I would recommend that all councillors have a look at those, and they were very well explained to us, and through the questions that were put forward, those were more than satisfactorily answered as well. One thing I would like to emphasise is that it is a good news story, and the OSC did see this as a good news story and felt, it doesn't matter what sports metaphor you use, that the council is punching above its weight on this, and doing very, very well with the proposed 540 homes. In terms of specifics that were discussed, you obviously have the notes in front of you, but I will draw 5 of these to your attention. We asked questions about regarding the interest cover ratio, and I had that thoroughly explained to us, that it's different in the local authority sector than it is for those of us that had a banking background. Secondly, we asked questions about the clarification on the debt to asset ratio. We were informed that compared to other councils, CBC is in a very, very strong position, and that's what we were told by Housing Finance Associates. Thirdly, it was acknowledged that whilst we would have increased flexibility in our use of the right to buy receipts, this obviously will decrease, or is expected to decrease. I believe that's programmed in. Issues of the expenses on decarbonisation were discussed and thought about. We have a nominal figure in there, but we are unclear as to precisely how much will be available in terms of future grants. So the figures are nominal, but 20,000, I think, per property was considered in the schedule. Finally, the Commission welcomed the report and, as I said already, the exemplary explanations and presentations with their variables, both in the mid and the long-term impact. So overall, very, very positively received, with the caveat that the questions that we asked were answered in detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. I'll now open the debate to other Cabinet members. Councillor Irvine.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, as ever, it's always good to get the endorsement and support of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, so thank you for that. And I would say that this year actually has been quite a hard year in terms of housing. We're struggling with homelessness, and I know that's not an HRA matter, but it's still something we have to deal with. And of course, we had the inspection by the social housing regulator, and that was quite an event which we seem to have come out of quite well. And of course, although we've got a lot of plans in the pipeline for starting up new housing developments, we haven't been able to get on with those this year, in part because of the water neutrality requirements. And even though this council has devised a strategy to deal with that, I was very happy to find out today that the government has actually lifted the water neutrality requirements. So now we can, there shouldn't be obstacles in our way of developing all the schemes that we wish to develop. So overall, I think that this business plan and our future plan shows that housing in Crawley has got a bright future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. I too saw the news coverage on the water neutrality. Yes. Any other Cabinet members? Councillor Hilton.
I think it's a testament of our this report. Thank you for all the officers and your report, Chair. It's a testament to all our good hard work over many years, and the fact we continue to build and we're meeting the decent home standards as well. And in terms of decarbonisation, I think the stock condition survey we're doing at quite a rapid pace, which justifies our expenditure in that science, will allow us to plan our maintenance going forward. I think we've already passed 1,000. I think we passed last year the 1,000th milestone for retrofitting for our houses. So I think the important thing is it's not just about decarbonisation, it's about energy security and lesser bills for our tenants. So I think it's win-win, and just keep up the good work that we've built up over many years.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton. Any other comments? Councillor Chris Mullins.
It's just with a report like this, which sets out really what an excellent situation we're in overall as a council, running the council housing stock, whereas many other councils around the country have divested of those council houses. Ours is a complete success story, and I look forward to seeing, as we go into this local government reorg, that we are in a position to defend Crawley housing, because nobody's going to run Crawley housing to the successful level that we do, and to the satisfaction of our tenants that we manage to provide, and that's the major worry I've got. Of course, some other worries in my own portfolio, but that we actually are prepared to take a stand when we need to, or if we need to defend Crawley housing, because I think it stands way above many other towns in the country as a success story, and something we should be proud of. And I think the council, housing officers and the whole system is excellent.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. I agree. Any other? I don't see anyone else, so we'll move to approve the recommendations. I'd like to thank everyone for their comments and contributions to tonight's discussion, which I think shows our plans for council homes are absolutely on the right track here in Crawley. Cabinet, we have to take any increased debt pressures on our housing revenue account seriously, but our advisors are clearly telling us that on what they've seen, our plans for our council home building programme are affordable, and we are handling the housing revenue account well, and indeed that this is one of the best financed HRAs they've seen in recent years. That is a tribute to this council and our stewardship. House building is expensive. There's no avoiding that, but that also comes with increased rental income, as I mentioned earlier, so with security that won't be eroded. And I would say to any naysayers, we have to remember that we still have a housing emergency in this borough. That can't be forgotten, and this council won't forget it. So with that, I move that the Cabinet approves the recommendations as set out in 2.2 on page 33 of the agenda pack. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Cabinet, is that agreed? Thank you. We will now move on to consider the corporate plan. I will present the report, and in doing so, what I would actually like to say, hopefully observers have noticed or noted the significant amount of business, the coordinated amount of business that has come through this Cabinet meeting today, which I think just underlines the scale of vision and the coordinated, competent way that we are as a council and administration and a political leadership addressing the needs of what needs to happen in this borough. We're still excited for this borough. We still believe strongly and care deeply about what happens here, and that we might not have long left as a council, but in the next 2.5 years, we're absolutely going to do what is required to do our duty and to leave this borough in an even better position. So this council has a corporate plan which was due to take us to 2027, and we are delivering on the priorities which were set out in that plan. But since then, the landscape's changed, which means we need to refresh and renew our plan. And as I mentioned earlier on, local government reform means that CBC will cease and the powers and responsibilities of the council will be transferred to a new council. But before this happens, we want to ensure that the council remains focused on delivering for local people in Crawley. And this is the document that will help us do that. We still have a job to do for local people, and we're going to do that, even with under our already strained resources. This plan is therefore setting out our priorities until a new council is vested. It gives clear direction to officers about the work that needs to be done and the issues that the council wants to prioritise. It will ensure that we remain focused on delivering, something which is always important, but even more so with LGR. The second change is our corporate peer challenge. In the action plan we published after the Corporate Peer Challenge came to Crawley, we committed to producing a new corporate plan and would also bring forward performance measures to increase transparency and ensure local people can see the work we're doing for them and with them every day. If full council agree this plan, we will then bring forward measures and report on these to both OSC and Cabinet to show our progress on delivering the plan. Looking at the key features, we cannot do everything in the time we have left as much as we'd like to. Although we will try to do the best to do our best to do as much as we can, and we have to make choices about the key areas we'll prioritise and the outcomes we want to see. So in this plan, we focus on 5 areas which we believe tackle the biggest challenges that the town faces, as well as improving the town, its services and facilities, so that everyone who lives, works or has fun here can get the very best from Crawley. These areas are to create a thriving local economy with green jobs, tackling the housing emergency, ensuring that Crawley is a vibrant town with high quality facilities, to build connected and thriving communities, and to prepare Crawley for the future. In addition, we make 5 key commitments to Crawley. We will develop and implement a new economic and placemaking vision that maximises the opportunities to develop Crawley's vibrant economy. We will work with Network Rail and West Sussex County Council to deliver improvements to the Three Bridges station. We will get major new housing projects underway for Crawley residents and develop a pipeline for new homes in the future to tackle the housing emergency. We've spoken a lot more about this in the previous item, but over 540 units either delivered or under construction by the end of this council is an ambitious target for a council of our size, but one we feel a high level of confidence that can be deliverable, provided all the conditions are met, some which are dependent on third parties. We will create a lasting legacy for the borough and its residents by transforming Goffs Park in the heart of the town, and we will create a new town council, and we will protect and champion the new town offer for residents. In a time of uncertainty, our corporate plan sets out a clear direction to continue delivering for Crawley to ensure that the council is focused on local priorities and that Crawley is in the best place for the future when a new council starts the next chapter of our town story. I'll finish there for the time being, and I'll bring in Councillor Russell to present the Commission's comments. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chair. And as before, you will have the brief summary of the comments and the recommendations. The first thing I would say, which isn't necessarily in those comments, is something that we did discuss, was the quality of the report, its focus, its readability and structure were all complemented. And I think that reflects the excellent work that's been done by officers and by the council. Second point, recommendations, it was acknowledged that the report and some of the recommendations have come from the Corporate Peer Challenge. Moving on, there was some discussion, and it is explained in the recommendations, there was some discussion as to whether the bullet point on establishing a full town council was completely in line with the community governance review, but it was made clear to the OSC that the council remained open-minded about the outcome of the community governance review and consider all options and proposals. And finally, it was just a small point in terms of the priorities, which was mentioned as to whether it might be wanted to include, as well as the green jobs, to expand just the job diversity is a significant aspect that the council was looking at. Obviously, we don't want to leave ourselves exposed to one particular sector, as we've seen, but that was just a minor thought and not something hard and fast. So those are the thoughts and ideas that from the OSC, but overall it was thought to be an excellent piece of work, and particularly how, and it was articulated at the meeting by officers and agreed with, particularly how it ensures that there is an ongoing focus of delivery to the residents of the various priorities, and that was going to be key for the council as it continues in its final years and months.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Leader. Firstly, I welcome the fact that we're updating and accommodating with a new local plan to take us to the end of what will be the time of this council. That feels a sensible thing to do, so that I welcome. Maybe it's starting to feel a little bit like we're on death row here at the council, talking about our own demise. But it is right, and actually I will give the leader a little bit of credit in some of his opening remarks about wanting to do the best things and the right thing for Crawley and for the council for our remaining time in office. In terms of the priorities, they're hard to argue against, and I wouldn't look to argue against. They pretty much write themselves, in as much as we know what the challenges are and what we would ideally like to do as a council. But obviously delivery is another matter. So when I started looking, so the priorities were fine, and I started looking at the priority programmes, and I saw the local economy, yep, Three Bridges Station, yep, need to get on, do that. It's been dragging around. New homes, yes, we need that. We've got some really good news about water neutrality being lifted, which will hopefully help us with quite a few things, actually. Goss Park, that's great. And then turn the page and then see, what's this town council? Create a town council that would protect and champion the new town offer for the residents of Crawley. And I'm thinking, well, hold on, we've not even had a community governance review yet. It's not even started. And yet here we have a presumption, the cat being let out of the bag, about wanting to recreate a Crawley Borough Council via the back door. As best one can. That's what that feels like. It would be much better to say something along the lines of ensuring that, and indeed in the priorities, which is fine, preparing Crawley for the future, ensuring that residents realise the benefits of local government reorganisation, seeing continuation of high quality services, meeting their needs. That's absolutely right. And yes, we could talk about parishing as well, and that could be made, but we have an automatic assumption here that it's a town council. And it talks about new town offer. Well, are we still in the 1950s? Although technically Crawley is classed as one of the post-war new towns, I'm not sure how many people here today in Crawley still think of it as a new town as such. So it almost feels like it's a bit harking back to the past rather than looking forward to the future. But of course, recognising that we want to preserve the good heritage that we do have. And finally, where are my KPIs? Now, the report did say that they will be coming in due course, but I'll just remind Cabinet, we wouldn't even be having KPIs but for the fact that I put forward an amendment originally to what will now become the previous corporate plan. And that was unanimously accepted, and that was good, because we know they never happened. We've had apologies for that, although not at leader level, I note. And we will be getting them, but we will get to the point where how many times is this local plan going to be reviewed? Because, as has been stated, we've got the local plan will cover 2 years and 5 months, and so I believe it's going to be reviewed annually. So all I would say is let's get a move on and get these KPIs in train, because the leader did it again when he presented this item. He blew his own trumpet and told everyone how great he was and how great a job he's doing. And, well, okay, where's the evidence? Let's see that, rather than just take the leader's word for it. So I look forward to the formulation of the KPIs and being able to scrutinise those properly like we see at other councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. I'll respond towards the end of the meeting on those. Councillor Sue, Chris Mullins, is it? And then okay.
I don't know. Did you go?
If cabinet members could indicate, that would be useful if they want to.
Yeah, I was trying to flash up, but.
Right. Okay.
Can I just say a couple of things then, and then I'll let Sue speak. I'm sure
yes,
she'll do
yes,
much better
speak.
job of it than I will. But I think the bullet points that are on page 53 and then on page 54 are all excellent. I mean, they're all objectives that, had we not been going through local government reorganisation, we would be doing anyway, because that's how we run Crawley. And what they are effectively is bringing out the things that we believe in and that we want to hang on to and that we want to build into the future for this town. This town is not like any other town in Sussex. It's very different to the other towns in Sussex. No town has got the ethnic diversity that we've got, and hasn't got our history either. So I just think that we are a unique town, and I think that the objectives that are laid out here are objectives that I really can support 100%, including, of course, the wonderful Goffs Park development. As far as the comments made about the town council, it doesn't surprise me that Duncan's making those negative comments about the paragraph here. It doesn't surprise me at all, because I really hope that we don't get the West Sussex takeover of Crawley that I fear, because we need to be able to look into the future as still as a proud town, a council town that is important to the people here, and a town that we can have local councillors on representing. So the idea of creating a town council is an excellent idea, and one that will give us a voice into a new situation, whatever that appears to be. And the councillors that will come together to create that town council could as well, I suppose, be in the unitary if that's what they wish to do. But we do need to defend this town, and we will need to defend this town into the future. We will need to look after the interests of Crawley residents, and the taxpayers' money that they've spent creating facilities for this town, that under these circumstances that could come, could be under threat. So many of the Tory councils flog things off, get rid of things, don't run things themselves, think that private enterprise does it all better. The truth is, they do not do it better, and what we run here as a council is excellent, and I hope that we can continue doing that. I think, Chair, that the town council concept is written well. It makes a simple statement, and I don't think we should change it, not for 1 minute. We should go forward with the intention of creating Crawley Town Council and getting our councillors there to make sure that they're having a voice that says something important and in defence of this town.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. Councillor Sue Mullins next, and then Councillor Hilton. Yep.
Thank you very much. You know, when they first came forward with local government reorganisation and the thought that the great history, the over 70 years of Crawley and the achievements we've done were likely to disappear, it would have been very easy as councillors to just sit back and say, oh, well, there it goes. We'll just sit it out now for the next couple of years, and then we'll forget about it and move on, and it'll be somebody else's problem. But we haven't done that. As councillors, we've sat up, looked at what's going to happen, and made plans, and we've been ambitious. We still have a vision for this town, an ambitious vision. We are still committed to our residents. We're committed to what they want, what they need, and what they will continue to want and need in the future. We've identified the priorities that we think are the things that we can achieve, hopefully in the next couple of years, before we become part of a much bigger unitary authority. We also need to make sure that we're on a stable financial footing, as we were talking about earlier. And we also need to have a strong message to the new unitary of what Crawley is, what Crawley represents, what Crawley has achieved in the past, and what we would like to see Crawley achieve in the future. We don't want to see what Crawley's done in the past be swallowed up and to disappear into something big, faceless, that our people no longer have any democratic input into. Having a town council is really a vital way forward for this town. We still have a lot of interest here. We've talked about how Crawley is unique. We have a special place in West Sussex, a special place in the whole of the county, and in a special place into whatever comes out of reorganisation. And it is important that we still have that strong voice so that the people of Crawley have people they can talk to and have somewhere they can go and make representation for their needs and their wants. They're not going to disappear. Crawley is not going to disappear. West Sussex County Council might think it can just swallow us up and take us over and just dispose of whatever they want to and get rid of all of our history and our great legacy. That is not going to happen. There are still people sitting around this table and who sit around the table in the council who really are passionate about Crawley. That's not going to change, and we're going to make sure that their voice and the voice of the residents of this town are still heard and their interests are served way into the future.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Sue Mullins. Councillor Hilton.
Words there from Councillor Sue Mullins. Thank you for that. It's fun, isn't it? We've read earlier reports about the finances and the challenges, etc. But I really like this corporate plan. I think it's readable, it's simple, and as a cabinet and a council, it's something we can take ownership of. It looks at our priorities and actually looks at our challenges. And I think it says it all that one of the priorities is tackling housing emergency, and the fact that takes one large chunk of our priorities, I think says it all about the times ahead. And also what I like is that it's not just about the legacy items like Offs Park or the great news about wanting to build 540 new homes, which I think is good in all different ways to the community as we grow and developed. But it's also about the big and small things and the aspirations. And although I think the report actually says it is about aspirations and the KPIs will come later when we measure them. But when you look at the smaller things, a lot of things which is related to my portfolio actually, keeping the place clean and tidy, keeping the litter, keeping the grass cut, keeping the parks clean, etc., which comes into your portfolio. That's the things people think about when they think about the town. So it's not just about the big things, about the small things. And, you know, I commend this report to the Cabinet and the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton. Any other Cabinet members, or are we finished? I don't see anyone else. So thank you to everyone, and thank you to Cabinet members and councillors for your thoughts tonight. What I would say, just addressing what Councillor Crowe said, Councillor Crowe mentioned death row. Well, we are soon to discover if there is life after death in local government, or perhaps reincarnation. I agree. Water neutrality is an excellent development in terms of the changes in the restrictions on that. But just addressing the point he made, I make no apologies for mentioning the new town offer, because we have some great facilities in this borough, but they're there because of our new town heritage, and we have to protect them. You know, you could look at a lot of other towns across Sussex and Surrey, they don't have what we've got. They don't have the arrangements we've got, and we have to protect them. And I don't think it will happen without that town council being created. I say that. I say that in all sincerity and seriousness. There are so many areas, indeed, surrounding us, certainly most of Surrey and Sussex, that have parish councils. Why not Crawley? It's not correct. It's not recreating this council. It's creating something different, but it's creating something that will be suitable for these things that we want to protect and we don't want to lose. In terms of the KPIs that have been mentioned, we need agreement specifically on what those are. But otherwise, I think it's as it is set out in the report. We are actively moving towards that. So I think I don't think that we need to be concerned that won't happen. It will, and some of the reasons why it hadn't happened before have been thoroughly rehearsed now. I also wanted to thank the OSC for the 2 issues that came out of the meeting. Having given those detailed consideration and consulted officers, I would propose that we do not take forward one of those comments but incorporate the other. With respect to the Town Council, the corporate plan sets out the view of the administration that there should be a Town Council. This was also agreed on at full council, the majority of councillors. This does not mean that the council is not open to other options, and the Community Governance Review expects to hear from a wide range of people with a wide range of views, and will consider all the responses and ideas that come forward. And a statement now of the administration's position of wanting a town council does not does not preclude amendment further down the line, but I don't think it's necessary to write that into the corporate plan. With regard to the diversity of jobs, I think we can incorporate job diversity into any economic plan, and an amendment, although it's not strictly necessary, indeed I felt it was implicit in the statement that a strong and diverse economy that is not overly reliant on any one business sector would be an aim of such work. But I'm happy to make that amendment if clarity would be helpful, and therefore I would suggest that we would agree, Cabinet, propose an amendment to priority 1 before going to a vote on the overall recommendation, that after Crawley's vibrant economy, that we insert the words "with new and more diverse jobs." I'm looking around the room and I'm guessing that seems reasonable. So, can I have a seconder for that, Councillor Noahs? Sorry, you weren't quick enough, Nick. So never mind. Right. Next time, yes, right. In which case, Cabinet, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We now move on to an exempt item. So I propose that under section 100A, subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act by virtue of the paragraph specified against the items. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you, Cabinet. The recording and live stream will now finish. So I wish to thank anyone for watching and hope that they have a peaceful and rewarding rest of the evening.